Hey, are you tired of the left and right politics? I hope you'll subscribe to my YouTube channel. Just click that subscribe button, ring the little bell, and prepare to free your mind from the traditional red versus blue. So I've given my political background as it relates to voting many times in the past. The basic facts are as follows. I turned 18 in the spring of 1980 and quickly registered as a Republican. Why? Probably initially because that was the party of my parents. I think we all have a tendency to do that, at least initially. I was a very active Republican from 1980 for the next few decades and remained in the GOP through 2010. I had voted during that time period only for Republican candidates at the top of the ballot, voted for plenty of Democrats, but for presidential candidates, only Republicans until 2008. In 2008, I broke with the party and voted publicly, meaning I talked about it on radio at the time, voted for Barack Obama, but remained in the GOP. And then finally, the break point for me was 2010 when I became an independent. Although in Pennsylvania, we refer to independents as non-party affiliates. There are a million like me in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. I'm proud of the fact that I have never missed an election for which I've been eligible to vote. But that means that since 2010, I've not been able to vote in primary elections, in the all-important nomination process, which is a real bummer for me. In 2016, actually, it occurs to me, in 2016, when Donald Trump was running for president, I went back to the GOP almost like a poacher just so I could vote for John Kasich. I got in the party, then got out of the party again, and remain an independent or a non-party affiliate. The subject of not being able to vote in primaries, because Pennsylvania is a closed primary state, is a big burr in my saddle. And that's why I was so thrilled when Alan Novak and TJ Rooney wrote a great piece for the Washington Post that is right now in my social media. So please access it when you're finished listening or watching to this conversation. They're uniquely qualified to weigh in on this subject because Alan was the head of the Pennsylvania Republican Party and TJ was the chair of the Pennsylvania Democratic Party. And yet they see eye to eye now on the subject of closed primaries, writing under the headline, "Want to help resolve American political dysfunction? Allow open primary elections." And both of them join me now. Alan, thanks for being here. TJ, nice to see you again. I appreciate both of your time.
Well, thank you very much for having us, Michael. We're really thrilled to be with you today. We're thrilled to be of like mind on this issue and have the opportunity to talk about it.
I think in 2004, I have a vague recollection. Am I right that you were both the chair of your respective parties for the '04 cycle, that you overlapped in that year? Because I have a recollection of tracking each of you down at conventions and doing an interview. And TJ, I don't know, maybe it was Denver, but I've got this in my. Was it? Okay, in like your. I just remember you had some kick-ass suite at the time as the head of the Democrat, and Alan had very humble quarters. That's my recollection.
That's kind of the way we roll. He's very humble and way over the top.
Alan, if I had come to you while you were the chair of the Pennsylvania Republican Party and said we've got to have open primaries, what would you have said then?
I would have said, you're out of your mind. I would have said, there's no way I can get behind something like that and remain chair of the GOP in Pennsylvania.
Because you would have regarded this as against the interests of the party, right?
I would have, yes. And frankly, I think all of the members of the state committee would have regarded it as against the interest of the party back then.
TJ, would you have said the same thing in your role as head of the Pennsylvania Democratic Party?
I would have, Michael, and now I would make the exact same argument. And it's because at the time, there weren't a million independent voters in Pennsylvania. And you can make the argument as the partisans understandably and respectfully will do. These are closed party affairs. We get to decide our own fate. We don't need interlopers. All of the kind of rhetoric that's been used throughout the years, I think, is played out. And when you think about it, 38% registered voters in Pennsylvania register as independent. I look at this as a way to grow the Democratic Party. I mean, think about it. These are men and women that generally identify more with Democrats than they do with Republicans. So if you're going to try to woo somebody, if you have your eye on somebody and you want to win them over, you want to bring them into your fold, you want to make them part of what you do it by opening, when you do it with open arms and welcoming language. You don't hit them with sticks and call them names. So I view this as a way to maintain not only the Democratic Party, but also to grow the Democratic Party over time.
Well, you anticipated my next question, which is, are you speaking now more as an American, as a citizen, than you are a partisan? Could this be sold, in your case, to the current leadership of the Democratic Party, whether it's statewide or nationally?
That's a great question, and I think the irony inherent in the question is yes. I think we have evolved. I don't know that the leadership of the party, understandably, and I respect their positions for opposing something like this, but I think the rank and file members, just as Alan referenced, the state committee members at the time would have set their hair on fire. I think there's a new day, and I think people understand that the way to grow our party is to have more people in our party, and the way to do that is to appeal more to independents. And then, Michael, it also has the beauty of hopefully moderating our politics a bit.
Alan, how did this come to pass that the two of you, and I know that in other instances you've had a sense of simpatico, but on this issue, how did you decide we're going to write for the Washington Post and we're going to take this position?
Well, Michael, we've been advocating this position for a couple of years. You may recall that the former president of the Pennsylvania Senate, Joe Scarnati, introduced a bill a couple of years ago in Pennsylvania advocating or opening up the primary to independent or nonpartisan voters. And we both testified at the Senate state government hearing in support of that bill for the reasons that TJ just articulated very eloquently. And I agree with TJ. I believe it is not only right for those folks that are taxpayers of any state that support an election, including primary elections, to participate in that election, but I think it's healthy for the parties to hone their message, to understand, identify with independents, and start to advocate and win them over. So I believe it is, but not just good for the democracy, not just fair for taxpayers, but also it will be good for parties and party candidates.
Well, what about the issue to which you've just made reference, and it was in the piece, that these elections, primaries, you say, must be taxpayer funded. In our state alone, they cost the public $20 million every year. Has this ever been litigated, as far as either of you know, the idea that someone like me is paying the freight for a process in which I can't participate?
I'm not aware of any litigation, Michael.
And it shouldn't come to that, I think, is our overarching point, Michael. It shouldn't have to come to litigation. This is about fairness. This is about equity. This is about empowering people to use their voice, their franchise, to make informed decisions. But the beauty of it all is those informed decisions, I think, will make our politics better, or make our government more efficient, make things work. Because clearly what we're doing now isn't working. We need to mix it up.
Okay, and let's address the why it isn't working. You write, that means the real decision-making happens in the primary elections, and when you shut out millions of independent voters, you place that decision-making in the hands of increasingly small partisan bands of voters. It's these people whom politicians must persuade to win election. That's why the threat of being primaried has entered the political lexicon, and why our elected leaders can't legislate on the issues that many Americans agree on. Alan, amplify those thoughts.
Well, I think one of the quotes that we have, or one of the lines in the piece, is today, from my perspective, and I agree, I think TJ would agree, we see people looking over their shoulder as they perform their duties in their various legislators or halls of Congress at what could happen to them on a particular vote in the upcoming primary, i.e. being primaried, as opposed to looking ahead, trying to solve a problem in a way that a wider audience of potential voters might agree. But this whole idea of being primary tends to drive decision-making in the halls of legislatures. And that's discouraging because that isn't getting things done. That is going to your partisan corner and digging in and looking for cover in your partisan corner to avoid the primary, as opposed to doing what problem solvers advocate, which is working across the aisle, being more moderate, compromising, and maybe moving the ball forward and getting something done.
TJ, your thoughts on that issue, on the significance of primaries and how it relates to this?
Yeah, well, it also, I think Alan articulated what the net effect is, but it also, Michael, speaks to the need for better districts. The way we construct districts in Pennsylvania and in many, many other places also lends itself to this kind of partisan gridlock, where you're only concerned, your district is so packed with either Democrats or Republicans that all you care about, all you cater to, all you think about are those things that move those people, that get you there. It's not about getting to the middle. It's almost a race to the polar opposite ends of the political spectrum, when I would argue, and I think my buddy would agree, that we need to get back to the center. Because when you get back to the center, you get stuff done. You don't get everything done that one side or the other wants. But Michael, our economy, our democracy demands predictability. And where we are today does not lend itself at all to any form of predictability.
Well, the other factor in this witch's brew, I think, are individuals who do what I do for a living, because where do these primary partisans, the most ideologically driven among us, get their news and information? It's from very polarized media outlets. And I have to say, it's kind of a bygone era when the party leadership was TJ Rooney or Alan Novak, because today the party leadership is terrestrial talk radio, or it's your cable channel of choice. People are siloed in. They're getting information that only reinforces the views that they hold. And then those people who are being reached by largely men with microphones come out and cast their ballots in the primary season. And a guy like me is sitting there in a general election saying, I don't want this extreme and I don't want this extreme. Like, where are all the independents who, according to Gallup, comprise a larger portion of the electorate than either Republicans or Democrats?
And they're siloed out.
And Michael, I think, we're going to have a fascinating, for those of your listeners across the country, Pennsylvania is going to be a fascinating place in the next year, because not only do we have an open United States Senate seat, we have an open governor's race, an open seat for governor, which we've never had. I mean, somebody really old was in short pants the last time this happened. So we're going to have a fascinating, and it's going to be an experiment. It's going to see, we have really good candidates running for governor or United States senator as Democrats, some very left of center, some more to the middle. And you have the same dynamic on the other side. It's going to show. I think that it's not at all impossible that we elect people for nominees of both parties who would otherwise in 5 years ago would have thought to have been too extreme. Their positions would have been too extreme to be elected in Pennsylvania. And because of what you said, Michael, that is what we may get in Pennsylvania. Two extreme candidates in a moderate state where most people live in the middle. It's insidious that the polar ends of the spectrum drive our dialogue when most of us, 80% of us, live in the middle and we want to get stuff done. They don't.
Okay, so I want to ask this question. I never thought in my lifetime I would see absentee balloting for no cause absentee balloting. And yet that came to pass, I guess, in a trade-off where no longer can you pull the big levers, so to speak. So now this gives me a sense of optimism. Is it possible, is it likely that we can become an open primary state in Pennsylvania, Alan?
Well, I would hope so. I know legislation has been introduced by Senator Laughlin from Erie and Representative Chris Quinn from Delaware County that would be the same type of legislation that the former president of the Senate, Joe Scarnati, introduced. That's a long uphill climb. That bill passed. The Scarnati bill passed out of the Senate. It got bogged down in the Pennsylvania House. I would hope that internally, folks that lead caucuses, like the current leaders of the Republican caucus, understand they have some issues inside their own caucus. And I believe Democrats understand they have some issues with extreme elements inside their own caucus. I would hope that at some point this time there is a chance to get this done. I think it will ultimately happen Michael. I would like it to happen for this upcoming election that TJ referenced, because it's such a once in a couple of decade type opportunity to have an open Senate seat, an open governor's seat, and frankly, a new mix of the congressional districts as well in Pennsylvania.
TJ, you get the final word. How likely is this?
So, Michael, thank you. And I would add on to exactly what Alan said, but take it one step farther. For people who care about this issue, and words have never been uttered like this before, but you need to talk to your state committee members, because when we talked to Joe Scarnati, the former Senate president, he told us in his view, and he was a prolific vote counter, in his view, it would have passed the state Senate. But where it got held up was when they heard from their state committee, when elected members heard from their state committee members. So I would just urge people who care about this issue to get in touch with your state committee members and use your voice to hopefully affect them when they speak to the caucus leaders that Alan refers to.
And I would just add that although this is kind of a Pennsylvania-centric conversation, I think it applies to, it's roughly, I believe, a third. I should have the latest numbers, and I don't, but there are a lot of states just like ours, maybe not as critically important in a presidential race as Pennsylvania, but it's a national issue. And I think that the country would be well served if we didn't have closed primaries anywhere. That was great, guys. Nice to see you both. You both look well. I really appreciate your time. And I thought that the piece was extraordinary. If I could write as well as the two of you, I would have said the same things.
Thank you, Michael. You're so kind.
Thank you, Michael.